Gunsmoke was that they dubbed it, the adult Western.
James Arness, the towering star of Gunsmoke, once called a co-star truly evil, a statement that shocked fans at the time. For years, the public had no idea what could have caused such strong feelings. Behind the cameras, tensions were high, creative differences ran deep, and personal clashes simmered for decades, yet none of it ever showed on screen. Join us as we dig into the real story behind James Arness's intense dislike for this co-star and uncover what really went on behind the scenes. A television gamble. The story of Gunsmoke didn't begin on television. It started on the radio in 1952, at a time when families gathered around to listen to stories instead of watching them. From the very beginning, the show stood out. It wasn't just another Western filled with action and simple good versus bad plots. Instead, it focused on realism, tough decisions, and the harsh life of the American frontier. That grounded approach quickly made it one of the most respected radio dramas of its time. At the center of it all was William Conrad, the man who gave life to Marshal Matt Dillon through his voice alone. Conrad didn't need visuals to command attention. His deep, steady tone made Dillon feel strong, fair, and believable. Listeners trusted him as a lawman, and that trust became one of the key reasons the show worked so well. His performance helped shape the identity of Matt Dillon long before audiences ever saw the character on screen. What made the radio version so successful was its tone. The stories felt serious and honest. Characters faced real consequences, and not every situation had a clean or happy ending. There was a strong sense of right and wrong, but it was often complicated. This moral depth gave the show weight and made it different from lighter westerns of the time. People didn't just listen for entertainment. They listened because the stories felt real. With such strong success on radio, it didn't take long for CBS to see a bigger opportunity. In 1955, the network decided to bring Gunsmoke to television. This move seemed like a natural next step, but it came with a major challenge. Radio relied entirely on sound, while television required a strong visual presence. Suddenly, the focus shifted from how Matt Dillon sounded to how he looked. This created a difficult decision for producers. William Conrad had already defined the character's personality, but they felt his physical appearance didn't match the image they wanted for television. They were looking for someone tall, commanding, and visually fitting for a frontier marshal. It was a tough call, because replacing Conrad meant risking the very identity that made the show popular in the first place. That moment became a turning point. The producers had to choose between staying loyal to the voice that built the show or reshaping the character for a new medium. And that decision would lead to one of the most surprising casting choices in television history. The casting pivot. When CBS moved Gunsmoke to television, the biggest challenge was casting the right face for Matt Dillon. On radio, William Conrad had already made the role famous with his voice. He sounded strong, confident, and believable. But television was different. Producers now had to think about how the character looked on screen, not just how he sounded. They wanted someone who could physically match the image of a frontier marshal, tall, commanding, and visually striking. Because of this, Conrad was not chosen to continue the role on TV. It wasn't about his talent. In fact, everyone respected his work. The issue was purely about appearance and how the network wanted the character to come across visually. It was a difficult decision, especially since Conrad had helped build the show's identity from the ground up. Still, CBS believed that television required a different kind of presence. At one point, the role was offered to John Wayne, one of the biggest Western stars in Hollywood. Wayne was known for playing strong, fearless characters, and he seemed like a perfect fit. However, he turned it down. His reason was simple. Television required a demanding schedule, and he was already deeply committed to his film career. Taking on a weekly series would have limited his ability to make movies. Even though he refused the role, Wayne still believed in the show. He saw its potential and wanted to support it. That's when he made a key suggestion. He recommended his friend James Arness for the part of Matt Dillon. At the time, Arness was not a major star, but he had the physical presence the producers were looking for. He was tall and serious and carried himself in a way that fit the role perfectly. Wayne didn't stop at just recommending him. To help the show succeed, he appeared on screen to personally introduce Arness in the first episode. This was a smart move. Wayne's popularity gave the new series instant attention and credibility. Viewers who trusted Wayne were more willing to accept Arness in the role, even though he was new to many of them. Once the show began, James Arness quickly proved that the casting decision was the right one. He didn't try to copy Conrad's version of Matt Dillon. Instead, he brought his own style to the character. His performance was quiet, steady, and strong. Over time, he made the role completely his own and became closely connected with the character in the minds of viewers. That bold casting change didn't just save the show. It set the stage for everything that followed. But what audiences didn't know was that Arness brought more than acting skills to the role. He brought real-life scars that would shape everything. Scars of war. Before he became the face of Gunsmoke, James Arness lived through experiences that would stay with him for the rest of his life. During World War II, he served in the U.S. Army as part of the 3rd Infantry Division. He was sent to fight in one of the most dangerous campaigns of the war, the Battle of Anzio in Italy. This battle was intense and deadly, and Arness was right in the middle of it. Just days after landing in Anzio, Arness was severely wounded by German machine gun fire. The injury was serious and life-changing. He suffered damage to his leg and foot, which required a long recovery period in the hospital. He was awarded honors for his service, including the Purple Heart. But the physical cost was something he carried with him long after the war ended. These injuries didn't fully heal. As the years went on, Arness dealt with constant pain in his legs and feet. Walking for long periods became difficult, and the strain only increased as he got older. By the time he was starring in Gunsmoke, the pain had become a regular part of his daily life. Even simple movements on set could be uncomfortable, especially during long filming days. The production team understood his condition and made several adjustments to help him manage it. Scenes that required a lot of movement were often scheduled earlier in the day, when his pain was more manageable. Directors also worked around his limitations by planning shots carefully, reducing the need for unnecessary physical strain. These changes helped Arness continue working without drawing attention to his struggles on screen. Despite these challenges, Arness remained committed to his role. He rarely complained and preferred to keep his condition private. This quiet strength became part of how he played Matt Dillon. His movements were measured, his expressions controlled, and his presence steady. These qualities made the character feel calm, serious, and reliable. Viewers saw a strong lawman, not someone dealing with constant discomfort behind the scenes. Over time, the pain did have an effect on his mood, especially during long or demanding shoots. It could make him more tired and less patient, particularly as the years went on. Still, he never let it affect his performance in a noticeable way. His dedication helped maintain the consistency of the character throughout the show's long run. In many ways, Arness's real-life struggles added depth to his portrayal of Matt Dillon. His strength wasn't just acting, it came from lived experience. And as the show grew, he wouldn't be facing those challenges alone, as a full cast came together to bring Dodge City to life. The perfect ensemble. As Gunsmoke settled into its television run, it wasn't just James Arness carrying the show. A strong group of supporting actors helped build the world of Dodge City and made it feel real week after week. Each character brought something different, and together they created a balance that kept audiences coming back. Milburn Stone played Doc Adams, the town's experienced and often blunt doctor. He added wisdom and a sense of authority, but also moments of humor and honesty. Then there was Dennis Weaver as Chester, Matt Dillon's loyal deputy. Chester's limp and soft-spoken nature made him stand out, and his kindness gave the show a warmer side. After Weaver left, Ken Curtis stepped in as Festus, a rougher and more outspoken character who brought a new kind of energy to the role of deputy. But one of the most important figures in the series was Amanda Blake as Miss Kitty. She ran the Long Branch Saloon and was one of the few strong female characters in the show. On screen, she was confident, independent, and respected. Her presence added depth to the stories, especially in scenes involving Matt Dillon. What made the cast truly special was how naturally they worked together. Their interactions didn't feel forced, conversations flowed easily, and relationships developed over time in a way that felt believable. This chemistry helped the show stand out from other westerns, making Dodge City feel like a real place with real people. Miss Kitty's character went through an important change when the show moved from radio to television. In the radio version, her role was more direct and hinted clearly at her past as a saloon woman with a complicated background. However, television in the 1950s had strict rules about what could be shown or discussed. Because of this, her character was softened. Her past was no longer openly mentioned, and she was presented more as a respectable business owner. This change made the show more suitable for a wider audience, especially families. At the same time, it gave Amanda Blake the chance to shape Miss Kitty into a more layered and relatable character. She brought warmth, intelligence, and quiet strength to the role, making Kitty someone viewers admired. Over time, Blake became an essential part of the show. Her character wasn't just supporting Matt Dillon, she stood on her own. Fans connected with her, and her presence became one of the key reasons the series worked so well. On the surface, everything seemed to fall perfectly into place, with a cast that looked united and in sync. But behind that strong chemistry, not every relationship was as smooth as it appeared. The romance. One of the most talked about parts of Gunsmoke was the quiet, ongoing relationship between James Arness's Matt Dillon and Amanda Blake's Miss Kitty. From the start, there was a clear connection between them. They cared about each other, trusted each other, and shared many meaningful moments. But their relationship never fully turned into something official. Instead, it stayed in a space that felt close, but was never clearly defined. This slow burn dynamic became one of the show's most interesting elements. Viewers could see the feelings in the way they spoke, the way they looked at each other, and how they supported one another during difficult situations. At the same time, the show never gave a direct answer about their relationship. They were not openly a couple, but they were also more than just friends. That balance kept people curious. There were clear reasons why the relationship remained unresolved. Television in the 1950s and 1960s followed strict guidelines, especially when it came to romance. The show needed to stay suitable for a wide audience, including families. Making their relationship too direct could have caused problems with network standards. By keeping things subtle, the show avoided controversy while still telling emotional stories. Another reason was the writer's long-term plan. By not giving a clear answer, they kept the audience engaged. Each episode offered small moments, short conversations, shared looks, and quiet support that suggested something deeper. These moments kept viewers invested over many years. People tuned in not just for the stories, but also to see if anything would change between Matt and Kitty. The writers were careful in how they handled this. They gave just enough to keep interest alive, but never enough to fully resolve the situation. This approach created a steady sense of tension that lasted throughout the series. It allowed viewers to form their own opinions about what was really happening between the two characters. What made it work so well was how believable it felt. The connection between Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty came across as genuine. Their interactions were calm and natural, which made their bond seem real. This created the illusion of a deep and meaningful relationship, even without clear confirmation. Over time, this unresolved romance became one of the defining features of the show. It added emotional depth without changing the core structure of the series. Viewers stayed invested because they wanted answers that never fully came. On screen, it looked like a strong and meaningful connection built on trust and care. But off-screen, the reality between the actors was far more complicated. The feud begins. While Gunsmoke looked calm and steady on screen, things behind the scenes were not always the same. Over time, tension began to grow between James Arness and Amanda Blake. In the early years, any issues between them were not obvious, but small differences in personality and working style slowly started to create distance. Those who worked on the show later shared that there were signs of discomfort between the two. They were both professional and focused on their roles, but they did not have a close personal relationship off-camera. Conversations were often limited to what was necessary for filming. As the years went on, this distance didn't improve. It became more noticeable. There were also reports that James Arness privately expressed that he would prefer Amanda Blake to leave the show. These feelings were never made public during the series' run, and they were not openly discussed in interviews at the time. Still, accounts from people involved in production suggest that the tension was real and ongoing. It wasn't one single issue, but a mix of disagreements and personal differences that built up over time. Despite this, both actors remained highly professional when the cameras were rolling. They understood how important their roles were to the success of the show. When filming scenes together, they delivered performances that felt natural and full of emotion. Viewers saw warmth, trust, and connection between Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty. Nothing in their acting suggested any kind of conflict. The cast and crew were aware of the situation, even if it wasn't openly discussed. Many described the relationship between Arness and Blake as polite but distant. There was no open hostility on set, but there also wasn't the kind of easy friendship that some of the other cast members shared. People learned to work around it and focused on getting the job done. What made the situation especially striking was the clear contrast between what audiences saw and what was actually happening. On screen, Matt and Kitty shared quiet moments that suggested a deep emotional bond. Off-screen, the actors behind those characters often kept their distance from each other. This gap between performance and reality added a hidden layer to the show that viewers never saw. Even during press events and public appearances, both actors maintained a respectful image. They spoke positively about the show and their work, helping preserve the idea that everything was running smoothly behind the scenes. From the outside, it all looked perfectly controlled and professional. But as time went on, deeper issues would begin to surface, especially when creative control entered the picture. Struggle for control. As Gunsmoke moved into the 1960s, James Arness was no longer just the lead actor. He had started gaining real influence behind the scenes. With the show's success growing each year, the producers trusted his judgment more. Over time, he became more involved in decisions about scripts, character direction, and even casting. This shift gave him a stronger voice in how the show was shaped. At the same time, Amanda Blake had also developed a deep understanding of her character, Miss Kitty. She had played the role for years and felt strongly about how Kitty should grow. As her character became more popular, Blake wanted to explore deeper emotional layers, especially in Kitty's relationship with Matt. This is where the disagreements began to take a more serious form. Arness and Blake had different ideas about the direction of the story. Arness preferred to keep the show grounded and consistent, with its original tone. He believed that Matt Dillon should remain focused on his role as a lawman, with his personal life staying mostly in the background. For him, keeping the relationship subtle was part of what made it work. Blake, on the other hand, wanted to move things forward. She believed that after so many years, the connection between Matt and Kitty should become clearer. She pushed for more direct emotional moments and a stronger romantic storyline. From her point of view, this would give the audience something meaningful and satisfying after following their relationship for so long. These different views often led to tension during production. Writers and directors sometimes found themselves in the middle, trying to balance both perspectives. Some episodes leaned more toward emotional storytelling, while others returned to the more restrained approach that Arness preferred. This back and forth made it difficult to keep a consistent direction for the characters. The situation also affected the overall atmosphere on set. While work continued as planned, there was an underlying pressure whenever scenes involving Matt and Kitty were being discussed or filmed. Decisions took longer, and disagreements had to be carefully managed to avoid open conflict. Even with these challenges, both actors remained committed to delivering strong performances. They understood their responsibility to the show and its audience. Still, the creative differences added another layer to their already complicated working relationship. Over time, these ongoing struggles didn't just stay behind the scenes. They started shaping the way the story itself unfolded. And beyond creative disagreements, their personal differences would only make things even more difficult. Personality clash. Beyond creative disagreements, a big part of the tension on Gunsmoke came down to personality. James Arness and Amanda Blake were very different people, especially in how they behaved on set. These differences didn't seem like a major problem at first, but over time, they became harder to ignore. Arness was known for being quiet and private. When he wasn't filming, he often kept to himself. He preferred spending time in his dressing room or taking short breaks alone, rather than socializing with the rest of the cast. He took his work seriously and liked to stay focused. For him, keeping a clear line between his personal life and his work was important. Blake, on the other hand, had a very different approach. She was outgoing and enjoyed being around people. She often talked with the cast and crew between takes and liked creating a friendly atmosphere on set. She believed that building relationships off-camera could help improve performances on camera. Her energy made her popular with many people working on the show. These opposite styles led to small but noticeable issues. For example, Blake might try to engage in conversation or lighten the mood during breaks, while Arness might not respond in the same way. He wasn't trying to be unfriendly. He simply preferred quiet time. However, this difference in behavior could be misunderstood. Blake may have seen his distance as a lack of interest, while Arness may have found her approach distracting. Their expectations about working together were also different. Blake valued communication and connection, especially for scenes that required emotional depth. She believed that a stronger off-screen bond could lead to better on-screen chemistry. Arness, however, focused more on preparation and discipline. He didn't feel the need to build a personal connection to deliver a strong performance. Over time, these small differences began to build up. What started as minor misunderstandings slowly turned into ongoing tension. Each actor stayed professional, but the gap between them grew wider. They worked together because they had to, not because they shared the same approach or mindset. The long production schedule made things even more difficult. Spending so much time together without resolving these differences added pressure. There was little space to step back, and the same patterns repeated day after day. In the end, their personalities shaped how they interacted both on and off screen. It wasn't one big issue that caused problems, but many small ones that grew over time. And as the show continued, outside factors like fame and shifting attention would only make things more complicated. Fame, power, and resentment. As Gunsmoke continued to grow in popularity, the spotlight didn't stay focused on just one character. Over time, Amanda Blake's role as Miss Kitty expanded in meaningful ways. What began as a supporting part slowly became more central to the show's emotional core. Writers started giving her more screen time, stronger dialogue, and deeper storylines. This change reflected how much audiences had connected with her character. Fans responded strongly to Miss Kitty. She was independent, confident, and capable of standing her ground in a tough environment. For many viewers, especially women, she became one of the most relatable and admired characters on the show. As a result, Blake's popularity began to rise. She was featured more often in interviews, magazine articles, and promotional material tied to the show. This growing attention created a shift that some people on set couldn't ignore. James Arness was still the central figure as Matt Dillon, but he was no longer the only focus. As Miss Kitty's presence increased, so did the public interest in Blake. Some reports from those close to the production suggested that this change may have caused discomfort for Arness, who had carried the show from the beginning. There has been speculation over the years that Arness felt overshadowed at times. While he never openly spoke about this in detail, the situation itself could naturally create tension. In long-running shows, changes in audience attention can affect how actors feel about their roles. When a supporting character begins to gain equal or even greater recognition, it can shift the balance within the cast. As the years went on, the internal balance of the show continued to change. With more episodes, more fan engagement, and more media coverage, each actor's role evolved. These shifts weren't always easy to manage. Power within the production didn't stay fixed, and even small changes could have a big impact on relationships behind the scenes. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get more strained, the physical and emotional toll of the show would push everything even further. Pain and breaking point. By the time Gunsmoke had been on the air for several years, the work behind it had become extremely demanding. The show could produce up to 40 episodes in a single year, which meant long days, tight schedules, and very little room to rest. For the cast and crew, that pace was hard. For James Arness, it was even harder. Arness was not just dealing with the normal stress of a busy production. He was also living with old war injuries that never fully healed. As the years passed, his pain became worse. His knees, feet, and legs often gave him trouble, especially during long shooting days. What may have looked like simple tiredness or a bad mood was often the result of real physical suffering. When a person is in pain every day, patience can run short more easily. That may have added to the tension around him on set. The show also asked a lot from him emotionally. His scenes with Amanda Blake often carried quiet feelings and close personal moments. Even when the scripts were subtle, those scenes still required focus, patience, and trust. If Arness was already dealing with pain, fatigue, or frustration, those moments could feel harder to manage. Blake, who wanted more emotional depth in the relationship, may have expected a level of warmth or openness that he did not always have the energy to give. This is where misunderstandings could grow. Arness was known to be private and stoic, so he did not always explain what he was feeling. He kept much of his suffering to himself. That meant people around him may not have fully understood why he seemed distant or short-tempered at times. Without clear communication, small moments could be taken the wrong way. A quiet reaction, a delayed answer, or a sharp tone could all be seen as personal when they were sometimes tied to pain. The result was a stressful working environment that had many layers. There was the pressure of making a top-rated show, the strain of a heavy filming schedule, the discomfort of Arness's injuries, and the emotional work required by the story. All of these things added up and made the set feel tense at times. By the mid-1970s, after nearly 2 decades on Gunsmoke, Amanda Blake made the decision to leave the show. She had spent 19 of the 20 seasons portraying Miss Kitty, a character that had become beloved by millions of viewers. Her departure was not the result of disputes with James Arness or the production team, but rather a personal choice. Blake wanted to focus more on her family life and spend time at her home in Phoenix, stepping away from the demanding schedule of a long-running television series. While the partnership between Arness and Blake had ended, the world they created together carried on for fans old and new. If you found this peek behind the scenes fascinating, hit that like button and join us as we dive even deeper into Hollywood's most iconic TV dramas.